I would be more than happy to give him the Brownie Award. I'd consider giving it to Rob also, but I think Marcus making a career high in assists. And again, when your team makes 80% of your field goals, it's easier to get those dimes, but it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
there it is. There it
Doesn't
is.
matter.
Always a
He was
butt.
awesome.
Always a butt.
Well, look, what did we say
He-
about Marcus? The best version of Marcus is the one who doesn't shoot a lot. 3 freaking field goals,
I know.
13 assists. He was all over the place, man.
Hey,
He was
shout out us. We've been saying that for what, 2 seasons now? So shout out us. Even though he didn't probably like to hear it. Shout out us.
Yeah, Sherrod, go ahead.
the thing about him today was that it just came so easy to him and the entire team. I mean, they made their first 10 shots. Who the hell makes their first 10 shots in the NBA against a team like Utah, which, by the way, is the 9th best defense in the NBA? This was embarrassing. I mean, just talking with some of the folks in Utah, I mean, this was an embarrassing loss. The Celtics are the better team. I get that. But, damn, they didn't show up. There's no compete at all. And I give the Celtics a lot of credit for that, because what we've been talking a lot about is how they basically just take the will out of teams early, and teams they're just helpless.
So that is the kind of the question is like, it depends how you look at it, right? You're always looking at it from the team you cover or the team you're a fan of's perspective. And you play a bad game or you play a game like this, you're on the receiving end of it and you're like, we didn't have it tonight. But the other team and the fan base says, nah, man, we took it from you. We stomped you out. So it's always interesting, like, are these teams leaving here thinking, okay, we didn't play our best game and they took advantage of it? Or are they thinking like, that's a freaking buzzsaw over there right now? Because I don't know how you would, it's not like you lost by 10, 12, 15. You literally it was never a competitive ball game. They destroyed you.
Teams are leaving here lobotomized after they play the Celtics. That's what's happening, because they take everything that you value as a team and just rip it out, shred it in front of you. Like I said, they're taking your lunch money every single game. Think about this. Rudy Gobert is one of the elite defensive players in the NBA, really, not just in general, but just for the last decade, maybe all time, 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. You know how many block shots he had tonight? The same as John Zanis, Jimmy Toscano, Bobby Manning, and Sherrod Blakely. That should never happen. In fact, and not only did he have a big fat goose egg,
he was a no-show.
Their entire team finished with 0 block shots. That's inexcusable for a top 10 defensive team, particularly one that has the biggest big man on the floor. So, like I said, they lobotomize teams when they come into this building. And they take it a step further, and they do it on the road.
That's funny.
Sorry, Sherrod. You missed some good stuff earlier, and we're still giggling a little bit. But you're right. They're absolutely. You see the slumped shoulders, right? That's the best thing. You watch a couple defensive possessions, and a team just can't get anything going. Then the Celtics just bing, bang, boom. Their offense was a machine tonight. They just go the other way. One time they got it down to like 19. Celtics came right back, stepped on the gas, back to 27. Rob's blocking shots with his friggin' armpits, and everyone's like, oh, man, Bobby or Jimmy mentioned it, the Tice block. After that, Utah's like, what do we can't, I don't want to do this anymore. They just didn't look.
We're at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
Their third center or fourth center, depending on how you want to look at it, is pinning your stuff on the glass like Dikembe Mutombo.
Tice was awesome tonight.
The best Tice since last year, right?
Yeah. He's getting settled in. That's another thing Ime talked about post-game, was the bench starting to acclimate itself more and more. That's been his emphasis the last week or so here, is getting those guys into a flow. Certainly Pritchard's in one big time right now, and we'll get to him again by the end of the show.
I'm sure we will.
I gave you a shot. I gave you your shot.
They're stacking layers. I like to go from the top to the bottom. So, Smart, setting the table. You talked about the 10 for 10 start, Sherrod. He was everywhere moving the ball in that first quarter. One of his best quarters ever. This might have been Smart's best game ever in my mind. In total control.
No.
I mean, it's his career high for assists.
He's had 5 or 6 better games this year. Easily.
Right up there with any of those.
This might have been one of his better playmaking games, but I have to put it in context of the fact that the Celtics pretty much made every damn shot they took early on.
Fair enough.
He had 10 assists in the first 13 minutes on the court. Who the hell does that? Chris Paul doesn't do that. 10 assists in 13 minutes? that's a little bit more than just getting guys the ball in the sweet spots. That's just guys making anything and everything they throw up, which is great if you're the Celtics. That's what you want, obviously.
Yeah, it's early offense though. He's getting them into those sets quickly, and
Mhm.
he's the one. Oftentimes, him and Horford turning the defense into offense. It's amazing seeing how he has just embraced his position. You hear the defiance he talks with. Max obviously got him on the elevator saying it was all about just getting the ball to the point guard, and you hear him say this again and again, like that's who I am. We were just waiting to get me in that spot. Like he is very emboldened in the fact that him getting into this role, whether he's done it or not, I think that's a big debate tonight. Is whether this has always been smart. It's
See,
beautiful to
I don't.
watch right now.
It is, but I don't believe it's always been him because I just think that there was a point where he was looking to prove himself as a scorer in this league. I mean, he had the kind of the banner of being a combo guard, and he wanted to establish himself as a scorer more so than a playmaker. But now I give him a lot of credit. He's doing exactly what you want your point guard to do. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that Marcus is at that age where most NBA players are at their peak. And that's what we're seeing. I think this is the best version of Marcus Smart that we are seeing because he's at the best point
We can
in his
compromise
career
on
to
that.
be that.
So is this something that it's just taken Marcus, this amount of time to get
Yeah.
to where they needed him to be, sort of situation? Because I mean, this
Yeah.
this was a new role for him.
Right. I think it's a style, I think situation type thing. He is playing the style of basketball, and he's been put in a situation where he can do that with some consistency, and they're showing trust in him. I mean, that's the big thing. I think that there was a period of time where they really weren't sure if he could handle the load that Ime expects from him, but he's obviously proven himself worthy of being the playmaker full time and not just having to play off the ball at all. So.
I agree with that 1,000%. He had to prove it to them. He had to prove it to Ime. He talked to the Athletic about that. Great interview earlier in the year where he said basically Ime challenged him that he can't do this, and he sort of walked that back. But there was a sense that he wanted to do it. He said it after Chicago, maybe put the ball in my hands more. I'm just standing in the corner here. There's not much I can do about it. And then he actually went out and showed it in that Washington run. That was really the landmark moment
That's
for
what-
him, going out there and just firing the ball around, not shooting.
That's what bugs me about the narrative here is why can't we just watch it and say he wasn't doing it the way they wanted, or he hadn't shown it enough or consistently for a period of time to the point that there was legitimate concern among fans and the organization and his head coach that they might not have the right floor general, and to all of a sudden things starting to work, him upping the level of his game, him finally listening to some of the stuff that was being probably fed to him by coaches, not just Ime, but Brad last year. If you're going to do this thing of ours here, if you're going to run the show, you gotta.
Wasn't this the central issue surrounding Brad?
You gotta do it like this, and like not just him with Tatum and with Brown. If you're gonna, there's stuff we can do here if you just do it this way. And again, we talk about the wholesale buy-in. I think it began with Smart, so credit to him. But let's not pretend we've seen this and that everybody saw it from the
We've seen
get-go.
bits and pieces.
But even Ime was like, I don't know. Smart's saying Ime doesn't think I'm a point guard. Smart himself is admitting that his own coach doesn't think he can do the thing that every fan and is out there saying we always knew it. Nobody actually knew it. They wanted it to be true,
Right.
and they had to see it. And now you're seeing it. So like that's great. I mean, it was hard to say that this was exactly how this team and Marcus was going to play. After having saw what we saw to start the year, it didn't look like it was working. It didn't, and now it looks flawless. I mean, it's a remarkable turnaround.
Beautiful thing.
So yeah, I don't know, Sherrod. I don't know what happened there, but it was.
Wasn't this the biggest? This was the biggest controversy around Brad, is that he allowed Smart to do whatever he wanted out there. And Brad talked about it often when he was a coach. He was like, all right, if he's going to do these things on defense for us, we'll give him more leeway to be free and loose offensively.
Mhm.
And he may tighten it up a bit, certainly. I don't know I'm still digging to see like what the conversations were, where it changed. The I love you moment really seemed like that turning point, didn't it? Back from the injury, starts firing the ball around everywhere. The offense ramps up, his assists ramp up, his ball time ramps up. And from there, they've rarely lost. And that was the turning point of the season, it felt like, was that win in Washington when he came back.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Jimmy. Go ahead.
No, cosign. He took the
Oh,
words right out of my mouth.
All right, Sherrod then.
okay. The thing about Marcus that we all understand is that what he is doing and the freedom and flexibility that he was given is typically given to your best defensive player. When you look at teams that have that one guy that really stands out, teams go out of their way to give them freedoms that they don't give everyone else because they're going to get that back and then some at the other end of the floor. So that's why Marcus Smart was essentially given a green light to shoot when he wanted to because they knew that what he brought to the table defensively was going to compensate for whatever shortcomings he had as an offensive player. But now, as the primary playmaker, he's doing a better job of finding that balance between taking shots, probably fewer, which we saw tonight, getting other guys involved, and still bringing that defensive intensity and edge that they need. I mean, he is playing at the absolute best of what he has to offer. This is the best version of Marcus Smart we're seeing right now, all around game. I don't think that's even questionable at this point.
Not
I got
even
a question.
questionable. Oh yeah, what is your question?
For Sherrod, did the acquisition of Derek White compel Marcus Smart to really step things up and play the style that maybe he was supposed to be playing more so prior to the acquisition of Derek White? Did he feel a little heat? Did he feel a little pressure there?
I would imagine he would. I mean, especially when you consider Derek White's profile. I mean, he's similar size to Marcus, a good defender, and oh, by the way, he played with most of this coaching staff. So there's the familiarity that he knows that they have. That's probably stronger than what he had with them at the same point. So yeah, I think that definitely helped. But at the end of the day, Marcus was basically given an opportunity to do what he asked for. He wanted to be more of a playmaker. He wanted to have the ball in his hands more, and that's what eventually Ime and Jason and Jaylen have allowed to happen. Because that to me, I think Ime has been cool with Marcus having the ball as much as he needs it, but it was Tatum and Brown that had to buy into that. That's to me when they bought into it. That's when you saw the change. Because remember, Marcus would bring the ball up and he'd pass it to Tatum, and Tatum would just go ISO Tatum. And now that's not happening nearly as much.
Yeah, and that was the thing is like, when we always kind of sliced up the blame pie early in the year, I would always put the biggest helping on Tatum and Brown for not without them buying in, without them doing it all, it's impossible for everyone else to. And I think you needed that in order for there to be that trickle down. And I think Marcus could not be the guy he wanted to be if those guys were going to play my turn, your turn basketball. He's right. And if Ime was gonna insist, I want the ball, I want things to run through these guys because I want them to, be playmakers in X, Y, and Z. It was weird, and we had a lot of games where you just had non-shooting lineups, Smart and Schroeder on the floor at the same time, with Tatum handling the ball, terrible spacing, and just kind of really weird finishes and a bunch of blown fourth quarter leads. It just looked horrible. So those guys first had to buy in order to get Marcus to be the best version of himself. And then everything kind of took off from there. But Jimmy said the trade of White, I think it was everything. Smart was hurt or COVID or whatever it was, and he came back from it. And I think he felt the heat. He felt that it was possible he could be traded. He knew it. You saw him lobbying for everything. He did that interview about Ime this and that. He went out and just volunteered the fact in the post-game press conference that he told everybody. Nobody asked him, hey, did you tell your team you loved them? He just kind of put it out there. So he was kind of putting out there like, I want to be the guy here. I really like it here. We can make this work. You just got to have faith in me. And it all kind of started to fall into place somewhere after that. But I don't know if it's a moment. I don't know what it was, but I agree with Sherrod. Like, it had to start with those guys in order for it all to work, because otherwise you'd see flashes and you'd see pieces, but it just didn't seem like it was cohesive. And certainly not for 4 quarters, almost never on a nightly basis. Even some of the wins, it was like, they slugged that one out, but it was ugly at times. They're playing near perfect games now for 2 months. I mean, almost perfect games. It's incredible. And when they don't, they make up for their mistakes in such a resounding way that they're still pulling away from teams. It's remarkable.